I work with a group called Team 5. Team 5 is a group of former veterans and other folks that just decided, hey, we want to go out and make a difference. And we travel once or twice a year to different areas and we do relief work. We may operate on kids. We may show villages how to make clean water, have clinics, and we only work in what we call denied areas, or areas where most people won't go or can't. Recently, we were in Guatemala and we worked a recent volcano eruption called Volcán de Fuego. And Volcán de Fuego erupted and wiped out an entire village. When we got there, we were just part of a small group recovering bodies. You could still feel the ground was warm, and we were there over 2 months after it happened. The Guatemala government wouldn't even let anyone into the site, for my understanding, for the first several weeks. And we were only allowed in because we were badged by the World Health Organization, and we worked with a small group called Antigua Rescate. Basically, the town closest, the city closest, is the former capital of Guatemala, Antigua. And so we were there recovering bodies. And the official counts on the bodies were, I think, 100, 200. But I can tell you it was more like 2,000 plus. And so we're there digging out bodies, or really pieces of bodies, teeth, so we could help families get closure. And as we were there, my wife and I were talking with someone from Antigua Rescate. And the lady that headed it up looked at me and she goes, "This is a travesty that shouldn't have happened." And I go, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, if you look up on that mountain, you can see where the volcano was still smoking while we were there. And you could see the lava path. And then there was another area that looked like the lava had been in the past, but it didn't hit it then, so it had a little grass growing on it. And the main lava path, and I have a picture of this, went right down to this village, it really was a town." And she said this town was deserted. However, there was a group of people that were formed in a migrant caravan and were going to the U.S., but they were turned around in Mexico and told they couldn't go there. They had to come back. And so the Guatemalan government really didn't know what to do with all these people at once, so they stuck them in this town that really wasn't populated. Probably a good reason for that, since this volcano goes off a couple times every 50 to 100 years. But they stuck these people in this town, and she said they shouldn't have been hit by the lava in the first place, but there was a recent golf course put up, a nice resort, and so we don't know who, but someone went up on the mountain where the volcano is, and they took some backhoes and recut a new path for the lava so it wouldn't hit the golf course, and guess where the lava went? Straight through this town, where they had all these families relocated with a large majority of children. So I'm thinking, wait, you had a caravan go north and it was turned around. It came back. They were relocated here. You had a volcano go off and over 2,000 people died. You know, Professor, I think that's cruel and immoral. But you know what's even worse? You know what makes it immoral? Is that the caravans were organized by the State Department. Don't tell me what I didn't see. There were flyers. She showed me one. Published by our State Department, put up in stadiums and gymnasiums, telling people, come to the U.S., you can come, claim asylum, and cross the border. This is less than a year ago. This is last summer. Excuse me, Mr. Professor. Excuse me, Mr. Princeton Professor. When you start talking about billboards for cruel and immorality, you might want to start at the source. Like the morons that told people to come north when they shouldn't have. These are what these little things called unintended consequences are. Things like you, AOC, Nancy Pelosi, and the rest of the clowns in the clown bus don't understand. These are lives of children, lives of families. I'll never forget, and I'm not talking in hyperbole, I'm talking about personal experience. I've got the pictures, the video to show. When my wife and I were working there, we saw this little old man. And he had a little mask over his face, and he was digging around with his shovel in a certain area. My wife and I went over and talked to him. The reason we did is there weren't a lot of civilians there, like any. I don't know how this guy got on. And there weren't a lot of us. And he just said, well, I'm just looking for my mother, and I'm looking for my wife. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I was gone into the store when the volcano erupted. And he goes, I know they're dead. I know they're in heaven, but I would just like to get their bodies and, recover them and bury them. And he confirmed the same story about how they were told to come to the United States. This Princeton professor talks about creating victims. Well, you do, sir. The victims you create start way down in Guatemala. Because had they not been told to come to the United States, they would never have formed a caravan, and they would never have been sent back as a group to this area that wasn't super safe to begin with. What is immoral are people in position of authority, professors spouting uneducated pablum and talking points to forward a flawed and immoral ideology at the expense of people's lives. We hear it all the time in business. I used to hear it in the military, death by PowerPoint. But the liberal elites actually show us real death and destruction by talking points. The only way to combat this is to drag them into the light with history, truth, and experience. I know it's harsh. And I know listening to these chuckleheads, you just get frustrated. But then you can listen to someone who is a true gentleman, who actually recognizes history and experience and doesn't cheapen it. And I came across this, and I'm going to hat tip Real Clear Politics on this. I wanted to hear what an actual person of substance talked like, because you've heard these screeching folks, Nancy Pelosi, Rashida Tlaib, Eddie God. Let's hear what our vice president had to say. Cut 6. Our vice president here, let me set this up, is basically talking about the Holocaust. And we have a lot of folks on the left that are trying to cheapen it to advance their ideology by comparing the border to the Holocaust. Let's hear what a man of substance has to say. Cut 6, go.
We must teach our children and our children's children the truth of what happened. We must preserve the memory of those lost for future generations. And in that same spirit, we must never allow the memory of those lost in the Holocaust to be cheapened as a cliche to advance some left-wing political narrative.
Stop. I just thought you'd like to hear what a true statesman sounds like. What he's talking about is people are saying that things that are going on in the border are like the Holocaust. I visited the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. If you're ever there, I highly recommend you visit. I think there's one in Washington, D.C. too. You want something that'll crush your soul and squeeze your heart, and you can look evil in the face, go to the Holocaust Museum. Now, we have several Holocaust deniers in the liberal parties, in the Democratic Party. We have a lot of people that promote an ideology over history and experience, but there are men of truth and substance out there. You can really identify them because they're going to be the ones that are under attack. They're going to be the ones that are denigrated. They're going to be the ones that are called crazy, religious. Yet these same men with their religious moral values are the ones that believe in true freedom for all. They just know truth, history, and experience. And that's why I'm here today. I believe in truth, history, and experience.